Richard. Right, hello, a very good afternoon to you all. Thank you for travelling to the meeting today. A very, very warm welcome, and especially to our new councillor, Councillor Williamson, and others, new client officer, to my right, Paul, I believe. So, yeah, welcome to everyone to this North Essex Parking Partnership meeting. We do not have any evacuations planned today, as I'm led to believe. So if the alarm does sound, then we will be evacuating this town hall by going down the main staircase or the secondary staircase to the High Street, whichever is appropriate, and then to the car park behind the town hall in St Runwald Street. The meeting is being broadcast live. We do have some people joining us online. Angela, hello. Adrian Webb, hello. And I believe Chris, we're eagerly awaiting your arrival. The discreet use of mobile phones and other devices is welcome, but you are requested to set them to silent and do not use voice or flash camera functions, please. That's item number 1, and we move then swiftly on to item number 2, which is apologies and substitutions. I've not been made aware of any. We move then swiftly once again on to item number 3, which is declarations of interest. Any particular personal interests against any of the agenda items anyone would like to bring to the attention of the meeting? This is going swimmingly. Right. Okay, we're going to move on then to item number 4, which is have your say. We do have a speaker, but I'm advised that he would like to talk before the traffic regulation order item, which is item number 9. In regard to any other further speakers, we are just one statement to read, which Owen will do for us now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Statement received from Mrs. Irene Laird. Statement begins. Regarding penalty charge, I won't read out the penalty charge number. Both myself and my husband, Robin James Clark Laird, would like answers to the following. 1. Why the streets had no visible signs or instructions on parking rules in Kingsland Road, Mersey. 2. Why other cars who were parked before we arrived had not been given a fine. One car actually had its front and back driver's side wheels on the pavement. 3. Why the online dispute form on the site did not work, which meant I had to write physically and post an explanation. At that time, I did say we were in temporary accommodation. 4. Why my attempt to dispute this fine was blocked. 5. Why my attempt to obtain information via the Data Protection Act or Freedom of Information Act has been blocked. 6. Why the NEPP apparently wrote to an address I had not lived in for 2 years, even though they said they replied to the address the correspondence came from. 7. Why a fraudulent picture of the sign was sent, which was dated October 2014. 8. Why my photographic evidence showing the sign was completely obliterated by foliage and not in a prominent place has been ignored, along with other photographic evidence. 9. Why now we have applied to the court in response to your threats with out-of-time appeal has all of that been ignored. The latest forms have been sent to the court on 26 January, again, question mark. Statement ends.
Thank you, Owen. Just at my discretion, I wanted that to be read out. That needs to stay, as per all of our parking charge notices, within the proper process, and will continue to do so. So there's nothing more to be said on that. We move then on to number 5, item number 5, which is the minutes of the meeting, which was held on the 9th of November 2023. I'm looking for a proposer for those minutes, please, for those of you that were in attendance.
Chairman, could I
Graham.
just correct that I actually was present at that meeting and not Tom Cunningham from Braintree.
Thank you very much.
With that, I'm happy to propose the acceptance.
Thank you. Proposed Councillor Butland with that change. A seconder, please. Sorry, Councillor Barry.
Yeah, I just have a query on the minute as well. It says, and also present, it's got Councillor Alan Goggin, Tendring District Council. I don't recall councillor Goggin being there, and he's a county councillor. He's not a tendering district councillor.
Yeah, he was there,
Is he?
and it needs to be amended to Essex County Councillor,
Okay.
please.
All right.
Is that okay?
Yeah, are we doing matters arising on minutes before you accept them?
No.
No, okay. Well, I'll second them then.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barry. Seconded, Councillor Barry. All those in favour, please, show of hands. Thank you very much. Just bear with us a second, please. We move then on to item number 6, which is urgent items. We are in a position at this time where we do not have a deputy chairman. We are not at liberty to appoint until the annual meeting. We can appoint.
We have to at the end.
But we will have to at the annual meeting. And at this current point in time, I've not had any expressions of interest for vice chairman. So as it stands, we will pursue the meeting without. Any comments? Thank you very much. Number 7 is our financial report and business plan to be outlined and presented by Andrew and Chris. And I know Andrew's going to kick off. We are having trouble getting Chris here. Conspiracy theory. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as I say, my colleague, Deputy Chris Hargrove, is trying to join the meeting and has done much of the work on this, and I'd like to give him credit for doing so. Also has some of the detailed answers as well, but in his absence, I will attempt to present the report that's in front of you. So I think this is really, and I know it's been long awaited, an attempt to respond to some of the concerns the committee's had over a while about the level and quality of financial information received. I think we also set out to the committee that the process for improving the supply of financial information was an iterative process, so it's not going to all be done in a single go. But this paper represents the first step at providing the information that we understand that the committee requires. So what we've done is looked in detail at the core assumptions. We've looked at the forecast outturn for 23-24 and proposed a draft budget for 24-25 as well. In doing so, we've reviewed a number of key areas, I suppose. The first one is the management time allocations that have been charged against the NEPP. And part of that particularly relates to the time of the senior management in the NEPP really, and how much time they spend on NEPP activities, but also on other council activities as well. So we've revised those numbers down to reflect a more accurate current allocation of time between those respective areas. We also included a provision for bad debt, which is something that was done at the year end, but not actually built into the budget, and feel that it should be one. So we've included a bad debt provision. And we've also looked at the core budget assumptions as well, particularly in relation to 24-25. And what we've done is harmonise those with the key assumptions that we're using in preparing the Colchester City Council budget, so they are consistent and therefore, in my view, defensible. Forecast outturn for 23-24, so this is based upon a month 9 understanding of the situation projected forward. There are a few changes, some ups and downs as you would expect. One is to do with the vacancies in terms of civil enforcement officers and supervisors, which is generating a saving. A shortfall in penalty charge notices, partly as a result of a shortfall in civil enforcement officers, but extra income from parking permit season ticket numbers as well. All in all, projecting that there will be a surplus in the current year of £76,000 if it pans out as projected, and that will result in an overall the NEPP reserve the deficit would reduce to £84,000 if that pans out as expected. We also looked at the budget for 24-25, and that's presented as Appendix A together with the quarter, sort of the month 9 forecast position. We've reviewed direct expenditure and direct income, and there have been changes to both. But if the budget materialises as forecast, then it would result in a budget surplus in the year of £106,000. And I think the good news is that added together, that will result in the NEPP arriving at a positive balance, I suppose, at the end of 2025. Still short of its projected, it's determined a minimum level of balance, but it certainly returns back into a positive position, and that's I know a key consideration and concern for the committee itself. Risks highlighted within the report, one around pay, and that's been a challenge, I think, for the City Council for the last couple of years, probably as it has been for most councils across the country and in Essex. We factored in 3%. That's our core assumption, and based upon general inflation falling over the course of, well, as it continues to do, in fact, but over the course of next year as well, and therefore being able to live within a pay assumption of that level. But we flag it as a risk. And the other is, of course, bad debt provision, which is volatile from year to year, but we've built in a provision based upon current level of debts and our understanding of how the collectability of those debts. I think that's probably all I wanted to say. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you, Andrew. And that is where we go to next. So if we have any questions around the room, please, I'll take them in a sensible order. Councillor Barry, please.
Thank you, Andrew, for that, and thank you for the report. I would just like to bring up the deficit, and I think if we look back at the minutes of the last meeting on page 9 of the current agenda, it was raised. We suggested that a meeting of all 151 officers took place, and to bring a report to the next meeting, which didn't happen in December, but obviously is here now. And this would include a discussion on how any deficit would be shared between the local authorities. And I believe our officer has put in a written request for a written response to this question. So just to kick off, could we clarify that, please?
Thank you, Chair. I was hoping, as I say, my colleague Chris Hartgrove was going to be online. Unfortunately, he hasn't managed to join. But he did take a sounding from the legal and monitoring officer from Essex County Council about the interpretation of the agreement. And I think there's a discrepancy within the agreement, as you probably all know, in relation to the treatment of deficits. And I think that so the confusion within the agreement is a matter of understanding over sorry, I lost my words. Principle, I suppose, really more than anything else. So I think there's a clear intention that the view is that the committee is in it together when it comes to deficits, but the agreement itself is contradictory in a couple of places about the treatment of those. At one point it says that they will be picked up by individual authorities. Somewhere else it says, they'll be shared amongst the members of the committee, providing that action is taken to remedy the deficit position that's manifesting. I think one of the things that the committee therefore probably does need to do is to restate and therefore reconfirm the agreement itself in relation to those clauses to clarify finally the position around treatment of deficits. I think the intent is, as I say, is that the committee is all in it together, and deficits will be shared, providing we're all taking the actions we expect of each other around the table. But recognising that the agreement itself is contradictory to that in places, and that's probably needs to be, as I say, amended, subject to the committee being satisfied that they are of the view that in principle deficits are shared.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would agree with that principle that it is shared, but are you saying that there has to be some fundamental amendment to the agreement to restate that and confirm that? Because as you say, it's a matter of interpretation, and we don't really want to get to a situation where there is a deficit to be shared and there's an argument about how it's done. I think we all need, we have to forecast predict our budgets, and so we do need, and I perhaps ask for a consensus around the room, and whether or indication whether there has to be a motion brought here to either amend the agreement or clarify the agreement, or whether we just take it. I mean, I think you're saying that we're in it together, and that's a shared understanding in terms of the interpretation, but that could lead to some disagreements further down the line.
Thank you, Chair. I think whatever happens, the agreement does need to be clarified. Whilst it exists in its current form, that uncertainty continues. So we do need to bring forward a change of, or a revised form of wording around the two contradictory clauses to clarify that point. I think before we go away and rework that and present it back to the committee for a decision, which I think is a proper process, we just need to make sure that we understand what the committee's view is in terms of redrafting those clauses. And so, I mean, if there's a general view that, that the deficits are shared, then we'll bring back a revised form of wording that reflects
that. Sensible point made, Councillor Barry. What's the feeling around the room on that point? Any other comments, Councillor Hargreaves?
I fully support this. We've previously drawn attention to weaknesses or contradictions in the wording of the agreement. And I think it was because the deficit was never going to happen. Therefore, no one looked very hard at the wording. Then when you've got it, we went to the edge. Deficit was there. The wording actually said we should stop all TRO work, which has not happened. It's been delayed. Now we've got a plan that doesn't show a deficit anymore, so we're sort of back on, but we're still actually in breach of the agreement, which says if you haven't got £400,000, you need to stop. So I think that needs to be clarified. The agreement needs to be altered for those, and also the split of financial responsibility needs to be written in the agreement. We don't want to end up with some commercial deal argument. Oh, we'll give you this bit, that. It needs to be clean cut. And then if all the financial work goes well, it won't come to that. But I think we need a good agreement. Therefore, can we please schedule for that to come to a future meeting with a draft wording that we can all see and be happy with and sign off?
Yes, Councillor Goss.
Yeah, I agree. I'll be more succinct. I think I'll just say that it is shared responsibility. There's no question about that, because otherwise it means Colchester or Essex takes all the risk, doesn't get any of the reward, or Essex does actually, and then they end up having to deal with the deficit out of their own budget at times when no council has any money. So I think it's absolutely clear this is shared risk and reward, maybe less on the reward, and we need to get this updated crisply, make sure legal look at it, monitoring officers look at it, it's circulated to all council staff before it comes to this meeting, and that all legal and other correct officers have looked at it for every authority, and then it comes here once they're happy with it. So there is no question over it.
Yes, some very pertinent points, and I don't know around much about the legal timeframes in preparing or re-preparing documents like this, but is there a consensus of everyone in this room? Nikki?
I don't want to go over what Councillor Hargreaves says. Fully support that, and I fully support this motion that we should come back, and we should have a time frame on this as well. And it would be, in my view, should be advised for having it ready for March's meeting.
Thank you. I think we're just getting a flavour for whether this is something we want to go forward. I don't think we've got anything official motion wise, but I mean, is there a consensus in the room that we should move forward with this idea at this point in time? Show of hands. That's unanimous. So we will a time frame. Like I say, I'm not a legal, but we will seek some information and present that to you as soon as we can in relation to how quickly we can potentially bring this forward, and that's what we shall do. Councillor Barry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm assuming that this has to be passed through Essex County Council as they, obviously the lead of the whole scheme. I think I would just echo what Councillor Pearce has said about the urgency of this, and we don't want to kick it into the legalistic long grass. I think it's something that needs to come back very quickly and certainly be ready for the next meeting. Will be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Certainly. I'm shooting in the dark, so I'm looking at my Essex. I think they've heard loud and clear. We've heard loud and clear within the room, those that need to hear it, that this is the will of the committee. If I'm categorically told that this is going to be a difficult time frame, then I will let you know as early as I can. If it is going to be possible, I shall also let you know that that is likely to appear on your next agenda. But either way, I'll let you know. Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Chairman. I have 2 points on the report. First, thank you for the report, which I thought was very helpful. Can I just ask one question? Later on the agenda at item 10, we consider a number of paid parking sites across being increased. In the forward-looking projection, is any assessment made or is it intended to include in that money which is expected to come from those, or has that not yet been done?
Andrew? Or
yes, thank you, Chair. The new budget includes for those that 140,000, yes.
So in fact, it preempts a decision of this committee.
Well, in essence, yes, but I mean, you could move it around on the agenda if you wanted to, Chair, to put it after the considering of that, but Richard.
Also, we're looking at starting transformation. Whether the committee agrees to this amount in pay and display or not leaves us to know how much we need to get out of our transformation. So we begin the transformation next week, and there's an amount of money that we know is in there. If the committee disagrees with £140,000 and the pay to park, which was part of the agreement suggesting that each of the authorities should have some sort of plan to get out of the deficit, then we have to look at it a different way. And the different way is to look at it as part of our transformation.
Sorry to push this. Is the assumption then that there will be a full 12 months income from these? How much of the year has been determined that there will be income? Because it's a sizable amount in the budget that we're talking about. And when we get to that item, I have a couple which I would want to raise some issues about, but not necessarily to say they shouldn't happen, but I think there's something about the process that takes place. And to get a budget, well, I'll be honest, anyone in my organisation came to me with a budget which said, oh, by the way, Graham, we've automatically assumed that you will agree this. I know what response I would give them.
I think, sorry, Chair, and it's a valid point, but I recognise it's a difficulty in trying to put a budget together that you can consider, and it has to be based upon certain assumptions. Maybe it's a sequencing thing with this, how this item sits on the agenda. Maybe we should follow the conversation about the business plan, but they're both on the same agenda, which is the important point.
I think what it shows, Chairman, is that in terms of the way in which the committee operates on a budget, these things we should have been considering in October, November, as part of the budget making process, where officers would have quite rightly come to us and said, look, we think you've got to close this gap. Here is a suggestion as to how you might want to do it. And then we could have been in a position here where we would be writing off what we've actually got here is Hobson's choice. You can prove this will make your financial side look good, assuming the money comes in. But oh, by the way, you're also really committing yourself to another decision. And so I pushed that far enough. The second point is, given when meetings are held, would it not be possible for, particularly as we're potentially talking about, shared, and I don't disagree with that, shared risk, we all need shared knowledge. So when monthly reports are produced, I think every stakeholder should have a copy of those so that we can see it throughout the year and not have to wait till we get to a meeting and then think, oh, what's wrong? So shared risk, shared knowledge.
Goss.
Yeah, I think Councillor Butland has raised some fair points. I think I'd just make the observation that we were talking about this back in October, but we've obviously bounced it several times and rescheduled this meeting several times. So had we had all the information and a report of this quality, we probably wouldn't be sitting here now, and I wouldn't have had to take half a day off work.
I apologise, Chairman. Obviously, I wasn't here in October if that was the case, but I agree that that's the way we should go about it.
I think it's some great points throughout the whole meeting raised today. I think we're unifying this committee. There's new membership, new knowledge, and the way the information flows is now starting, I think, to go in the way that most of us wish to see it. And I think there's ideas that are coming out of these new clients and officers and councillors we've got in this room that haven't been heard before, and I think we're desperately writing those down to make this meeting as best as we can and make this organisation thrive like it has done for many, many years. So I'm quite content with those comments, and valid ones that they are. Are there any more questions, please? Yes, Councillor Barry.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just looking through the financial report and obviously cross-referencing them with some of the figures. I just got a few questions about the assumptions and the analysis. In 4.3, it says that welcome progress has been made by the finance team, and that there's going to be further clarity in financial reporting, including analysis of the finances broken down by partner district. And I know in the plan following this that there is a historical breakdown of figures. I'm just wondering why that is, why that's been done, and I would imagine that it's quite a difficult task for any. I know the 151s have got their hands full at the moment, but to actually look at each PCN issued in each NEPP.
It's all about deployment, issuing of PCNs, and if everything remained equal all the time, then that would be the case. During the summer, actually, we issued fewer, well, we got less income because there was less deployment. People take holidays during the summer, and we had a few people leave. There was quite a lot of attrition with the number of CEOs. It would seem that we've been a lot more successful of late in recruiting CEOs to post, which is an extremely good news story. In fact, there's another 6 more going through the process right now, on top of the 4 or 5 extras that we've recruited since August. There's a lot more deployment out there now than there was in August. So if everything had stayed the same, yes, I'd agree with you. But actually, there are more people, there's much more deployment of officers now than there was back when we were making these forecasts.
Councillor Barry, is that sort of answer your question?
I'm not sure it does actually, because I'm not saying, you work on the assumption that your officers are more I'm not sure I can see I'm just saying it's too good. The merger isn't and also on that partner products to see that you put in the area issues of 21st of August. So I like including all that income, additional income, 2 to 17,000 surplus. That's just the charges.
Can you remind me of the line you're looking at there? Sorry.
Yeah, it's the common products and services where the budget is 9.3, the forecast is 2
Yes, yeah. The fees and charges increased back in August, and we made a forecast back then about the level of income we'd expect to get in. Obviously, we need to keep revising these forecasts as we go through the year in the same way as we would with the PCNs. We need to keep an eye on that to make sure that our forecasts are in line with what we're actually getting in throughout. Yeah, same with the PCNs.
Just to remind everyone to turn their microphones on when we speak. I picked up some points there. So the question around the monthly figures for PCNs, in a straight answer, is that we have that data, don't we? So can we have an action to send that data out, please, at the end of the month 11? Yes, Andrew, please.
Can I just apologise for the lack of financial information to the committee, I think, over the last year. And I realise that some of the meetings have been cancelled, really. Explained previously, that's about myself and my deputy coming in and trying to respond to the wishes of the committee, I think, really, which means a deeper understanding of the finances, really, working closely with Richard and his team. I don't think we would ever say that this year's process is a perfect process or one that we would seek to replicate in future years. We recognise the need for the committee to have information to make on which to make decisions, and it is our intention to work consistently with Richard and his team to make sure that you have that information in a better time frame to enable you to make those decisions in future.
Thank you. I thank you for that. I think we acknowledge that we all have got a little bit to do, and the way we, as I said, present the information, the way it flows, the new knowledge we've got. This is a evolving committee. I've seen that just in the short time I've been in the chair, and we all have to catch up, and we all have to learn when we're new members, etc. So it's really grateful to you all for providing the questions, the scrutiny, and I'm sure there's more to come. You know, I mean, I'm encouraging all my friends and family to park on yellow lines as much as they can to ease the problem. My mother's had one recently in the last week, so well done to her. Perhaps Chris, perhaps you didn't make it into the meeting, but perhaps you can get us a ticket, help the cause. Well, I'm going to ask if there's any other questions first. I'll come back to you, Councillor Barry. Councillor Butland.
I just wanted to reinforce what, through you, Chairman, what Andrew has put forward But by actually putting an additional recommendation as 1.3, moving it as an amendment, to agree that timely monthly outturn reports are circulated to all stakeholders.
I find it hard to believe anyone would be against that. I'm certainly nodding, so that sounds a really reasonable suggestion. Is that okay, Owen? Yes? Okay, so when we do come to make those, yeah, of course, and I'm sure there will be when we come to it. Is there a seconder though, just as we sit here? Oh, Councillor Berry. Thank you for that, Councillor Butland, that was really helpful. Councillor Hargreaves?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Firstly, I just want to thank the Section 151 officers for the work they've done. I've got my accountant's hat on at this point, and also it's obvious that there's been a bit of catch up that they've been doing of things that should have been going on for some time, and therefore not everything comes out perfect, and you have to make some assumptions when you're forecasting. So thank you for that. I also note it's quite painful, all councils going through cutting budgets, looking what projects you want to do, you can't do, things you started, you have to abandon and waste money on it. We're seeing this elsewhere. So that is just what is happening. So that's with my accountants club hat. I'm taking that hat off. Just some questions and observations on the management time allocations. When we read this, it implies that actually it's all being moved, the change is moving it from on street to off street, and it implies an awful lot of time is being spent on off street. I think I heard in what was said that actually some of that time is being spent on things which are not NEPP, to elsewhere. Does that give an explanation as to why? I think Richard is nodding. Actually, he's spending time doing something else. I was rather concerned because we are a client of the other half of it, and while we're on a fixed price contract, we don't want to find next time round it's 15% more because we've just shunted it from one place here to make the budget better and moved it somewhere else. So I think I'm seeing an answer to my questions there.
Thank you. Two things. You'll be aware that this is my old title here. I'm now head of service, and head of service comes with a lot more to do with Colchester, some corporate issues that I have to deal with Colchester. But also I've been doing a lot of work with Colchester's master planning and providing a new parking strategy. We talked to Uttlesford separately about parking strategies, and a cost for that is known. So that's back with Colchester again. And it's their part of the off street that is paying for that. Yeah.
Thank you. That answers my question on that. My general feel on the budget is that every line has been finessed as far as it can go, which is a slight worry because it then means if you've finessed all of them, you've got no leeway when one of them goes wrong. The concerns I've got, the pay at 3%. No, that is standard what Colchester do. I'll change it. My feeling is that's a bit on the light side. If inflation comes down, fine, and that'd be great. We'll all love that. But I would say that is probably because obviously salaries are the biggest cost. That is, I would say, the biggest risk. Pleased that the bad debts are now being dealt with on the way that they should have been dealt with. You put the provision in based on last year, not this funny arrangement we had before, which I couldn't understand. That is good. Looking at incomes that haven't, I think, gone in, which could be a good thing, is on paragraph 5.2, it looks to me like the ratio between the cost of a CEO and the PCNs, the income they generate, is about 2 to 1 to the good. So if recruitment is going well, that would therefore imply, assuming you don't have a diminishing return from this, that the incomes will go up, net income will go up. That's good. And just a question, what are the data-led services? Because I couldn't find anything. I googled it. It's not on here. It's all been chopped out in one hit. And as I didn't know what it was in the first place, I'm sort of, if I didn't know and it's all gone, I'm not too bothered. But I would just like to know what it is that we are taking out that is not happening. So that's my final question on that.
Thank you, Chair. We're starting transformation next week, so the full details of that have to remain confidential until I've mentioned it to all staff that are involved, as I'm sure you'll appreciate. Data-led services were our digital team, and I can talk to you perhaps outside this meeting about what that encompasses. There's more detail to it than just that. But you'll notice that some of the items are moving around to other budgets as well. So, for instance, the CEO's and supervision budget has increased. So you'll see some things are shifting around within the service as well as a transformation that's dealing with removing some costs from it. So it's not all completely gone. Just be aware that the rest of it needs to remain confidential until I've spoken to the people it involves.
Okay, I didn't understand that, but I will not ask any more questions at this point, since it's obviously sensitive and we respect.
Graham, please.
Excuse my ignorance and the fact that I'm new on, and whose transformation programme is it?
It's the operational part. So the agreement allows us to deal with employing people. So it's Colchester as a lead authority who's dealing with the transformation, that we're looking to remove costs from the service to the benefit of the on-street service here.
And at what stage do the stakeholders get the opportunity to comment upon the quality of the transformation that's being proposed?
Colchester has a policy for doing its transformation, so it's part of our employment at Colchester. We have a policy for running through those, and we need to speak to those people first. There's then a consultation that follows after that. So that's the point at which it become public. So after the 7th, I think it is, we start. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think to answer the question more directly, the business plan that's been presented, our structure's been created to deliver that business plan. So that's where members will get the opportunity to sort of scrutinise and identify where those priority areas are. And then as part of the transformation process, that's when we design a structure that will deliver that business plan. So that's, again, timelines considered, it's got to be hazy, but the transformation that we're about to go through ultimately is gearing us up to deliver in part what we proposed as the business plan today, accepting that there might be some more scrutiny to come and some changes that have been proposed, which we're sort of ready for to adjust to. But yeah, in principle, the transformation consultation will be starting next week on Wednesday.
Thanks, Jake. Sorry, I'm confused there slightly. So the recommendation under point 8 is to adopt the NEPP business plan. So am I wrong in saying that we wouldn't be able to do that based on what you've just said today? Would we not just be noting it? Because you made the incursion that... I think I know what I'm trying to say. How did you feel it? What did you think about that response, Graham?
I'm still a little bit confused in terms of Colchester Borough Council, and it just happens to be Colchester, it could be any of them, is our supplier. It is talking about transforming itself. We, I think, are the only customer, if I can put it that way. So I do feel that we need to be well involved in it. I think the problem I'm having is that it is part and parcel of the transformation programme which Colchester Borough Council is quite right pursuing. But it, come back to this shared risk and shared knowledge, that I'm just a little confused as to how we would play into that, to say, well, that's a really good transformation, fully supported, or it isn't, whatever the case is.
Exactly my point as well. So if it's underway, then the horse has bolted, hasn't it? To be able to answer your question, where will we? Do you understand? What they can say to us, well, this is what we propose our transformation to be. Do you, as a supplier chain member, do you agree with it? Is it that?
I feel guilty because I'm a new member here, and everybody else might think I'm talking rubbish.
Well, I am to a degree.
But this is where I am on this, just observing from where we are. We have a client relationship between us collectively and Colchester Borough Council as the body that we contract with.
I've seen some hands. I've made some notes, Ken. I'll definitely be coming to you. We're eagerly awaiting your first speech in the chamber. Jake, first, please.
Yeah, I'll try and be clearer. So the business plan is what, from our perspective, is what members would like to be delivered by NEPP. We will then go away and build a structure to deliver those services. So if you're seeing something within the business plan that, from a member perspective, you don't want to be happening, you don't agree with, then that's where we should be scrutinising it here. The structure is then to deliver that is then what we're going away and doing in the background. We've started the transformation anyway because the structure, organisational structure that we have got, based on current costs and everything, is over, how much income we're going to get in or projecting to get in. So we know the service is costing too much anyway. So it makes sense to start that process sooner and get to a point where we think is where we're going to end up. But as I said, we're allowing for that slight variation from these committee meetings. So again, if there's something within the business plan that's in the agenda that you're seeing as an issue, I think this is the opportunity to scrutinise and discuss it and ultimately prompt those recommendations and changes. In terms of the structure, again, as Richard said, more than happy to talk to members outside of the public meeting to give them some reassurance of what we're doing in terms of actual positions and jobs and people. But yeah, the business plan is the thing I think that needs to be scrutinised and judged by members because that's ultimately the priority list and what you want to see and achieve within your own districts. And it's then for us to go away and create the structure to deliver those priorities as you see fit. Hopefully that's a bit clearer.
I'm going to come to Councillor Williamson, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. As a very new member of this committee, my understanding is that the transformation is, looking back over the papers, transformation is absolutely necessary to reduce the deficit and build up reserves. And I understand the issue of this being a public meeting. So I think what the members of the committee are saying, they want some knowledge of this transformation, what's going on, what it means to this committee. I think that probably from where we're coming from, it sounds a good thing, and presumably the principles of this transformation are in the new proposed budget for next year. Thank you.
Oh, very succinct points there, Councillor Williamson. Thank you. That was pertinent. Was there any answers to be made there? Jake, please.
Yeah. So just to confirm, yes, those principles are within that proposed plan, and yeah, more than happy to share some of those more intimate details of the organisational structure that we're going to be proposing and going through a formal consultation upon with our staff. Whether that's today, whether that's another opportunity, as I said, those details, more intimate details, will be more public knowledge within our staff as of next week anyway. So again, yeah, more than happy to share them then.
Yeah, and thank you. I can't reiterate enough the importance, especially to those new members here, of understanding as best possible the information that is presented to you prior to coming to this meeting. There was a lot of complex information, and these are quite delicate and sensitive conversations. We're talking about people here. We're not just talking about numbers on a page. So it's very important that this new committee, and I hope we long stay together than some have, that we really start to forge together and help each other to understand exactly what all of this means and to get ourselves into a much better position. Councillor Goss, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think to share an example would be a good way to try and hopefully get everyone to understand how the transformation or how the supplier delivers the service is down to that supplier. So to give you an example, in Colchester, we outsource to ID Verdi. Although we've got an aspiration to bring it back in-house. We went to ID Verdi and said, we have to cut the budget and here's our new standard that you need to adhere to. That's a set of requirements. That's in a contract. They came back and said, we can deliver that for this price, and some staff were made redundant. How they deliver that service is down to ID Verdi. As long as they hit all the KPIs and SLAs, then how they deliver it, if they bring people off from other contracts, whatever they do, that's up to them. But if they fail the contract and the KPIs, then we would step in and get into the detail. And I would like to use the same principle here. Colchester is a supplier, and therefore if it chooses to transform, it benefits everybody in this room because it reduces that cost. So that example I've given is an absolute mirror of what we're doing here. It just happens to be a public serving organisation, not a commercial organisation like ID Verdi. So hopefully that explains it. We'll communicate, I'm sure, what we can, but we also have to respect that people are made redundant, or might be made redundant or redeployed in the same way they were at ID Verdi, and some people lost their jobs because of that.
Thank you. I can take a question more. I think Councillor Barry definitely wanted to, but I'm keen to come to a close on this item. Councillor, oh sorry, Councillor Pearce. Oh sorry, I said Councillor Barry, but it's ladies first, so Councillor Pearce.
Just want to come back to your point about transformation. So in terms of that runs alongside from the risk that we had, obviously, through having the deficit. Just wanted to say, obviously, members would most probably want to have some sight of this. Most people, the fault from the part is that I find what you've, in your words were, I say thank you to officers as well who have put this together, but some of this financial report is actually a little bit woolly. It's a little bit woolly in the sense the way it's worded, and some of the wording I'm concerned about when it says if it manifests. So it almost says that this is subject to a lot of work to be put into this. We've already discussed, but for me it is still a little bit woolly. To actually have sight of the transformation would actually give us some clarity as well alongside this. So that would be advisable for members to have some. I know that some of it will be very sensitive.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Yeah, well, I'm relying on my esteemed colleagues around me here to hear these points and to minute what is appropriate to minute and to integrate that into the new way of working. I hate that term. Councillor Barry. Jake, please.
Yeah, so I'll try to address a few points, if I may. So in terms of the draft budget, that does take a worst case scenario view in that, you know, we've budgeted for a full quota of staff, and as we've experienced this year, that's obviously not been the case, and we've seen, you know, some of the benefits of not employing those people, and that we're underspent on salaries currently. So we have included that. So that's almost your worst case from a salaries point from enforcement there. And the piece in income that we've suggested within that draft budget is based on that full amount. So, I mean, more than happy to share some of the details around you know, expected income per CEO for PCNs with all members, again, with that shared knowledge idea. In terms of the second point then that was made about the imminency of the effect from recruits. So it is pretty immediate that we feel the benefit. So yes, whilst they patrol with another CEO, we always make sure that we've got some stock of uniform. So staff start with uniform. They're trained and with a handheld and having supervision immediately. So almost to put you in a fictional environment, if there's an area of non-compliance, one person can only do one person's work. If they've got two people there during their training moment, they can do two people's work. So there is almost an immediate benefit to that person. So yes, whilst it's climbing, and until they get to the point where they're lone working, there is still a benefit to recruiting them still. It's not a lag or a delay from the point that we recruit them and they're in-house to then actually starting. It is felt rather quickly, which is the good news. But yeah, happy to share some of those metrics that we use to anticipate the income with all members that you know, intended. Yeah, so we've taken the advice from the committee from previous meetings and reduced the PCN income budget because, you know, again, we're looking at another year where we're not going to achieve the amount that we set. So overall, that was 2.25, I believe, in this financial year. And as you pointed and highlighted earlier, we're not going to achieve that. So we have reduced it overall, but that is on a full complement of CEOs. I think it would be unfair for us to budget for a full staffing at NEPP, but then not show full income as a result. But again, that is still a conservative view because we didn't want to set the committee, but also the organisation and the staff, mindful that we're going through transformations, up to fail. We do want to set up to succeed. So that is still, I think, a quite conservative figure. But again, it's so easy for me to sit here and say that until, you know, we share those metrics with yourself and you can understand those a bit more, a bit more better.
Councillor Barry, I know you're keen to go out with one of these CEOs for a day, so I'll get that organised for you. Thanks, Jake. That was really, really helpful. Are there any other further questions on this item, please? Okay, thank you for that discussion, and I think there's been some relevant and important points made that we can now take forward to improve once again the information as it comes to you and the regularity of it rather than irregularity of it. Right, we have some things to recommended decisions. The first is to note the forecast outturn for 23-24 as of the 31st of December, period 9, and to approve the draft budget for 2024-25, including the projected impact on the parking reserve balance. And there was a 1.3 to be added, which, Owen, if you could read out for us, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, have an added 1.3 to agree that timely monthly reports are circulated to all joint committee stakeholders. And I also had from earlier in the meeting a resolution seeking a look into agreeing to the NEPP agreement, seeking legal and other staff input into whether or not that would be possible, bringing it to the March meeting, and you'll inform joint committee members if that isn't possible.
Yes. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you remembered that. So 1.2, 1.1, sorry, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 and 1.4 as just read. Can we have a proposer, please? Councillor Goss? And a seconder, please. Councillor Hargreaves. Thank you. All in favour, please. Thank you, everyone. We move on to item number 8, which is the business plan, and I'll hand over to Richard, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I put together a business plan for 24-25. There's not much room here, is there? Can you all hear me all right? It's all right, good. Put together a business plan for the forward years, 24-25. I've included in there a bit of the background as well, because I'm quite, I know there's a lot of new members to the committee. There's been a lot of turnover of membership on the committee just lately. And maybe that sets a bit of the scene, the background to things. So in part 1, I've gone over a bit of the history and where some of the deficits might have come from historically in the partnership. Just set a bit of a scene from how we've changed and grown the partnership and done different things over different times. And a bit about the brand itself and what NEPP means. How we've taken on new work from the county before as part of what we do now. And what happened particularly during the pandemic and the extension that came right as that was starting to happen, which really was a disruptor to us and disrupted things like agreeing fees and charges at that time, which probably meant a bit of a loss of income for us for about 3 years there, where we left fees and charges the same and we gave extensions to parking permits and things like that. So there are other reasons behind the deficit and the way we find ourselves in, plus we spent quite a lot on traffic regulation order making during the pandemic there and changing things back around social distancing. And you can see at some points we were spending nearly 600,000 on traffic regulation orders, and that's now fallen way back. So then I talk about the new agreement and what we've got and the things we've done since then, like Park Safe Schools, which turned out to be way more effective in much shorter time than we ever thought was going to happen. The trouble with that is it's cost us a lot more money to move things on an increased frequency between different sites at the same time as our suppliers' costs have massively increased. So there's quite a lot in that Park Safe Schools piece around some of the costs, and we talked a little bit about some of the services that we provided there. I talked about our bases and our employees in part of it there. And then a piece around the funding of on and off street services, what our non-direct costs cover, and just a bit of a reminder that at our annual meeting, which is the one we hold in June, we have the risk management framework which comes back there, and that's owned by the committee. Then looking at part 2, which in my little document here is my page 7 or 27 of the main pack there, just starting off the business plan piece. Our objectives are the objectives of the government. We have to follow the government statutory guidance on civil parking enforcement, and we interpret that as a joint committee through our adopted policy, which is parking management policy, and that's the baseline to which we work our foot patrols and our other patrol services and all that we do. That's the basis for what we do, and our business aims are there to support that fundamentally. And that's the other things that form around that, which are more optional things, and those are the things that we're looking at perhaps with the transformation to try and keep costs under control. So with that in mind, we've looked at some of the things that we've stopped doing already. Our 3 PR officers left, and that post has been vacant some time now and held. We had a data analyst helping us to interpret some more of what's behind what's going on, and did some really important work in setting up things that we can carry on using now, but just won't be developed any further. So that post has been held for some time vacant. And then there's a couple of other people who are leaving. One of them sitting to my left here in March, and another member of staff who's leaving in February. Those posts will all go into the transformation as well, and the budgets for those will all be looked at as we go. I mentioned the Park Safe Schools cameras and the cost versus the increase in our return on there. So we're going to pause that and have a fresh look at that to make sure we've got the right business case for those. We've talked about already as a committee the impact of salary increases, and I talked there a little bit in very broad terms about service transformations and the amount of cost that we're looking at changing within our operation. Then most importantly, the technical service. It's important to all of us because we'll come on to talk about traffic regulation orders in a minute. And we've looked at those traffic regulation orders that will be self-financing, the ones that have an income that can more immediately pay for themselves, like residence parking, where the permit cost can pay for the implementation of the scheme, and then the future permit prices can go to pay for the patrolling of those areas. Whereas the yellow line doesn't have so much immediate income. So those things need a bit of a help, a bit of a kickstart, which is why we have included in the New Year's budget a sum of over £40,000 to deal with those outstanding traffic regulation orders. And we know there's a little variation in the actual final costs between the advertising costs and the consultation costs. They can wave each way a little bit. So we've put some estimates in there for doing those. And there's been a couple of schemes that have come along in the interregnum where we've bounced this a couple of meetings across, so we've included those in there as well. Those are self-financing schemes and some other schemes that come with support. Then importantly as well, we've looked at sign and line maintenance, and the current year we've really cut that back as part of our rescue plan. We've done barely any in the current year at all. Spent a pittance really compared to what we were spending previously, but we mustn't leave that too long. If you get gaps and things and lines wear out, that can have a huge impact on your ability to enforce the whole lengths of things. So we've been really careful and prudent, I think, to put back in £25,000, which pays for several days worth of work to reinstate things that may be getting a little bit worn out. We've been looking at some other alternate inward funding as well, and really good timing that a neighbouring authority is doing some work on one of their parking strategies and needs some traffic regulation order work doing, and we've got some help that we can give to them. So there's some outside income in that. There's also some other self-funded schemes that I mentioned before. And I said we've looked at the return on investment between things that might self-finance and the longer term issues. Then I talk in a little bit more terms about the rescue plan in the current financial year, the one that's about to end in a month or two's time, and the ongoing rescue plan, which I think is where this, the idea of looking at probably scrutinising what we're doing in the future should come from, and the rescue plan for the forthcoming financial year, and what we need to generate in terms of looking at some new schemes versus what we'd have to do with the transformation if not. And that's why we can't completely be drawn on the content of the transformation yet, as we don't yet know until we make that decision. In annual increases at the Section 151 officers meeting, we heard that Essex expects an inflationary increase on fees and charges annually, but we've already decided our fees and charges for the next 4 years when we decided, so 1 plus a further 3 years, and those are above inflation increases, really because of just trying to get things harmonised still between the different areas, the costs of permits and so on, and what we can do with them. A pound makes quite a big percentage difference on some of these things anyway, and it needs to be rounded. So that covers that off. I mentioned the delay in having no fees and charges increasing during the pandemic, and for 2 or 3 years, that probably lost us a couple of £100,000. Maybe that was each year, so some of our deficit came from historic decisions not taken. A little bit around pay to park there and my permit convenience fees. Some of the other things that we could consider putting on, in addition to those things that we've talked about in the rescue plan. But I've drawn back from some of those because compound increases probably aren't the right things to do. But there are some other options there, like a permit booking fee or a convenience fee when you use My Permit. Those probably aren't the right things to do at the moment when we're looking at some of the other things that we're putting on. There's a blank page there, and then just the detail of who our suppliers are, and understanding the differences between the north area, which is the NEPP district, and SEPP. SEPP is much more built up and much more compact an area. The boroughs and districts there are really much more urban, and we've got this huge and by its nature rural area with great expanses that we have to cross before we can do some of our work. In 2 or 3 of the districts, really, we have to travel great distances between pieces of work, and that's probably not just the case in the south area. So there are differences between the 2 areas. Let me talk in terms of our programme of works for the forthcoming year, and I've set those out there in part 3 with the details of what is required to carry out those things that I mentioned at the start. So all of those there are given on page 34. And then just, my laptop catch up with me. Going too quickly for it. Just a summary of what comes at the end there. There we go. In terms of just repeating the financial position and the impact of the surpluses and things, and the 42,000 in traffic regulation orders as part of that budget is shown there. So there we are. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Any questions, please? Yes, Councillor Williamson.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I hope you can draw a breath and have a drink. Again, I can't keep on saying it, but as a new member, you mentioned the difficulty of the rural area and people travelling great distances. Have you ever looked at part-time officers just doing local, smaller areas rather than full-time dashing around on roads?
Richard, please.
Yes, we have. We consider part-time. We've got some part-time officers, in fact, working for us. Everybody who's a civil enforcement officer has to have the training, has to have the uniform, has to have the equipment to do the job. So there's a bit of an overhead with each, new unit, each head, each step change in deployment. Yes, we have. You want to add a bit more to what I'm saying there? We operate out of set bases at the moment.
Yeah, so flexibility is obviously a desire of the job market, I think, since COVID. I think everyone's realised that they prefer, including myself, working from home or just being more flexible in general. And luckily the council adopts a flexible working policy. It's obviously a national right, but similarly we do offer part-time contracts and more flexible contracts for staff. We've done a lot of work with partners over the last few months. I say we royally, a few members in the team beyond me, to understand actually what it is that CEOs want from the job. And interestingly, flexibility isn't necessarily what they're after. There's some other things there. So it's one of the things we're bearing in mind, considering we're looking at maybe starting a couple of pilots in more localised type environments. Schools is the obvious choice. You quite often hear parents outside schools saying, well, if I had a handheld and a printer, I'd quite happily issue a couple of tickets to save my children. So there's types of things that we might consider in future. But interestingly, the people that are coming through the door now are necessarily after more flexible working options. They're after something else. So, but it is something that we're exploring further.
Anything further, Ken? Councillor Barry.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, you're correct. There's no authority that's not being touched at the moment by changes to what's going on. As part of setting up the organisation, we were looking at the new agreement, and in the new agreement, there's a piece that specifically suggests that there's a need to do these things, and there's a list of them in the back of the agreement, in the appendix. We were setting up an organisation that would run cameras. So we've got the 4 cameras that are fixed sites, and we've got 3 cameras on vehicles, and we're looking to make that extendable to take on the new work. So we've got a management structure that could be extendable, and that's the bit that we're now having to take, a fresh look at, because it's not been extended. There's no new bit on the side of it to cover 20 new cameras or whatever the number might have been. And likewise, on the other side, on the civil patrolling side, you can't really do much of a worse job than limited weighting. That's a bit repetitive. If you were to make that in some way controlled, that cuts a lot down on the patrolling there. But you still need to have all of that in place, ready to go. So that's the extendability plus a little bit of that hierarchy. The hierarchy, that's another post who's left, in fact, and got a different job now. So that's part of the part of the transformation. So you've got the hierarchy set up, ready to add bits on the side of. So we're having a fresh look at how that whole structure is organised. Yeah, and that's what starts next week. The recharge amounts, yes, that we've got a table of those. I'm sure we can include those in the monthly. We probably only need them once to see what they are, don't you? But yeah, there are things like a bit of the legal service. There's obviously committee services running these meetings. There's a bit of human resources, all the sorts of things that go into running any sort of operation, any group within the council. They're all the parts of our non-direct recharges.
Is that all right, Councillor Barry? Did I see your hand up, Councillor Hargreaves?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Chair. It's just an observation. I think it was on page 31 of the agenda pages. It's just on the my permit fee and the credit card charges. Just on our own off-street, currently, we absorb both the 10p of the my permit and we absorb the credit card charge, which means on a half-hour slot, you really end it with pretty much nothing. So in the consultation which we're doing on our parking charges tomorrow, we are proposing that the 10p be charged back to the customer, but the credit card charge we will continue to absorb. And obviously the logic to that is also we've gone to entirely cashless parking. So we're saving the cost of people collecting, and we have a lot of vandalism, huge damage to machines, thousands of pounds done. We're cutting that out. So therefore the credit card charge is the equivalent of that. So it's a balance. But I wouldn't think it'd be a great idea to charge both of those to people in the way that, you go and buy a concert ticket for however many vast sum of money, and then you find there's a huge admin charge put on top of it, which makes you even more annoyed. So that's just an observation on this, is at the halfway house there that perhaps.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
So this, I've circulated a piece about the national parking platform, talking about service charges and my permit versus the other apps. So people might need different apps on the phone for different things. I'll circulate again to the client officers so you have more information on it. This was in the government's plan for drivers. It's probably one of the better things that means you would be able to use any app on your phone to pay for any parking in any place. So if I go to the Cotswolds, for instance, when Gloucestershire is running Ringo, I could use my permit app to pay in a Ringo car park, essentially, or vice versa. A person from the Cotswolds coming into East Anglia could use the app in a car park over here that is branded my permit. So that's what it makes sense, that sort of thing. But as part of that, they're looking at those service charges. That's cut a very long, very long story short. That's where it's coming to. Looking at service charges more globally. This is being run then, managed by the DFT in connection with all of the service providers. I'll bring a paper to the next committee, because if we sign up to show some interest in this before Easter, we get that at 0. DFT are saying after Easter you'll be paying £10,000 to join. I suspect that's maybe a bit of an incentive to make us think about it soon. And I challenge them a little bit on that. You know, could you leave it after maybe June at Parkex, where we can have a look at this thing actually working in anger? But yeah, it's something that we need to start considering, if not joining up to.
Is that all right, Councillor Hargreaves? Yeah, I mean, anyone who knows what parking service providers use in other parts of the world, I mean, I might not take you on in a pub quiz. Any other questions, please? Right, well, thank you for the update, the plan, Richard. And I think we have a recommended decision here to decide to adopt the NEPP business plan for 2024-25. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Goss. Seconder? Councillor Williamson. Made the minutes again. All those in favour, please? Thank you. I'm just going to call a minute's break, if that's okay. Number 9, and I did indicate that I would let Mr. Ireland come in at this point, who has been to see us before at the last meeting and is returned, and I'll give him the opportunity to say what he wants to say to us, and then we'll make some comment after, I'm sure. Thank you.
Oh no, is that going to fit across?
Let's try it.
I'll try on this side.
Don't keep pressing it, right. Okay, well, after that rather odd start. Good afternoon. I've come here on behalf of our community in the street Takeley to support our application for a residence parking scheme. This means we are petitioning to pay to park outside our homes because a parking permit scheme is the only way to stop the fly parking nuisance taking up all of the parking spaces. At the November meeting, I stated we have over 80% support of the local community and the full support of the local parish council. NEPP have evaluated the scheme with a score of 50 points. I'm here today to put forward the facts of our case. There is a residence parking problem caused primarily by fly parkers. Would anyone sign a petition for themselves to pay for parking outside their home if there was no issue with parking? Here is a photo of the area taken on New Year's Day 2024. The parking bays here were constructed in 1980 to provide car parking for the houses opposite that had no off-carriageway car parking. This was before Stansted fly parkers existed. Every car parked in the bays, which is these, is a non-resident, and all the cars parked on the left side pavement belong to a resident outside their home, which is this side. So the houses are on this side. This is typical of every day, every week in the summer and popular holidays. Outside those months, approximately 50% of the bays are invariably blocked by fly parkers. We know they are fly parkers because we see them unload their luggage and then lock up and leave their cars for a week or more in the laybys. Note the black car, this one here. This car is really taking up 2 spaces. This is inconsiderate hogging and is not unusual. The scheme will certainly be self-funding. At November's meeting, I declared our guarantee there will be no shortfall on the permit sales to pay for the implementation costs. When operational, the permit scheme will be a reliable net earner for NEPP. Please, could you pass this open cheque to the chairman of NEPP to use to make up any shortfall on initial permit sales. The whole amount can be drawn in advance if you wish. I make this request on behalf of our community for you to approve this necessary and self-funding permit parking scheme commissioned directly from NEPP. A ticket to pay keeps the fly parkers away. Thank you.
Tempted to give you a round of applause. This cheque, yes, okay. Right, well, we postponed our decisions on these, didn't we? I, as a councillor, and I'm sure other councillors in the room and client officers and many others may find that trying to educate people as to how you get a traffic regulation order and the process and the timescales, and it took me ages. It just took me ages to understand that, you put them in 1 month of the year and you wait 6 months and then you get an approval 6 months later, and then 4 months later you might be lucky and they come out and put the lines on the ground. You're lobbying us, and we're going to, ask you to seek some guidance here. But have you fed into this consultation that they're doing? Councillor Hargreaves is your gatekeeper, really.
Could I assist on this one?
You can go on then.
The consultation is actually on the off-street parking. So nothing for this. So, Mr. Allen, thank you so much for coming, and I should have thanked you last time you came. And I did on the way back last time. I took a diversion off and drove past to check it all out. You will have had, I don't know whether you looked, you will have had an email this morning from our Angela Knight, who's not here, but she's on the screen there. And the reason, what we're doing, Uttlesford has commissioned traffic consultants to look at the whole issue of the fly parking across this whole area, because it's all the way Takeley, it's in Stansted, it's in Dunbar. It's a big issue everywhere. And at the moment, we don't want to support individual bits of things, because what will happen here, the classic case of free block car parking there, it'll just displace them somewhere else. It'll make your lives better and less annoying with all this going on. It will just shift them somewhere else. It could shift them onto the grass bits on either end of it. And that is the real reason why we want to just not do this at the moment, and see if these consultants can come back with something which does the whole lot. Whether, when no one else has found a solution, they can, we will have to see. That's the reason we don't want to support it at the moment. And I would also comment, this is actually a small scheme. Residence parking works well if you've got a lot of spaces. If you've got 100 residents, you allocate, I don't know, 75 spaces, it means that it is being used. Because you don't all have you have no right to be right outside, and if that was all residence parking, and presuming your car is here today, there'll be spaces outside that no one can use, so you're reducing the overall parking availability. When there's a lot of spaces. Please do.
This particular parking area, should we call it, there's nothing else around it other than our houses. There's no other roads. There's nowhere to displace people to. The only reason they park here is because there are parking bays. So it's completely isolated. We have nowhere else to park because our pavements are narrow. The houses were built in the 1800s, 1700s, some of them. It's just impossible to park. And these people come, they park there, and we sit inside our houses looking out the windows with our cars parked on the road, on the pavement, where people have just sat there, left their cars there. So with all due respect, the 2022 consultation for the whole, the borough, it's obviously done nothing. And I'm offering here with their fellow residents, this is a self-funding scheme. NEPP have the ability to take work on themselves to do this work. It's already going to be paid for absolutely by permit sales, and if it's not, you've got the open check there to fill in whatever it costs. This needs to be fixed. It's going on and on. It's been there for years and years, and it's time to fix it, not wait for more reports.
Councillor Hargreaves?
Just a quick comment. I have such sympathy for this. The cost is not the issue here, actually, although just to advise, individual residents, I'm told, are not allowed to extra fund. I think parish councils might be able to, other bodies might be, but individuals are not allowed to. Effectively, it's the rich buying a car parking space for themselves. I think that would be the logic for that. So I'm afraid the cheque, I'm afraid it's probably not going to be cashed.
Only for the broken microphone.
No,
I had never intention of cashing any checks, so that's just make that clear on record.
So it's the issue of displacement and the fact we want to get the whole thing solved. And what happens is we've got area-wide websites just marking out where people can park for free. And they just drive from place to place. They'll have it marked on to where they're going to. To take that out, it will just push that. It will push that somewhere else, not necessarily right next to you, but it will push it on to maybe all the housing estates, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
It should be in the airport car park. Take it up your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ireland. I'd have to be sensitive to the member in question who is undertaking a consultation, which he reminds me is not actually, it's off-street parking, you said, didn't you? Yeah. I mean, we have some discretion here. I want to be sensitive to him. It's his area that he covers. He's saying no. We could potentially say to you, we might look at it again. I sympathise. I really, really do.
You could go for a deferral.
No, you're absolutely right. It does. But that's why, with our discretion, we're saying we might change that. Yeah, that's why I'm saying we might change that. I think I'm moved enough. I will just bring Councillor Goss though.
Having spent 10 years of my first 16 years of being a councillor trying to get residents parking around Colchester Hospital, which was a real nightmare for people, but we fixed it, and the resident only parking them has transformed people's lives. So I have real sympathy that you've got an airport which is going to generate even more traffic than a hospital, probably, or similar. I would actually be up for supporting this scheme, although it's not my area, but based on the experience, because my concern is the residents, we can use the cheque to sort out the deficit of NEPP if we like, but we're very generous if you've got £500,000 in there. But in all seriousness, but in all seriousness, although obviously Councillor Hargreaves knows his area better than anybody else, like I know my own area, I'm kind of wondering if there's a halfway house here that actually we should push it through, and then the review hoovers it up and deals with it as a whole. Because my concern, I think Mr. Ireland said, reports and consultations and everything else could go on for years. And it doesn't really help the residents. And ultimately, we are there elected. And I have to remind myself of this sometimes because we can all forget. We're all there to represent our communities. And if a community wants it and it can help that community, I do get about it pushes it elsewhere, but it's the same with the hospital parking. It has caused a knock on elsewhere, but we're looking to do that on individual schemes. I just wonder if there's a halfway house that we do it, and then the review catches up. And then if it changes what's there, it changes it. And I think Mr. Ireland has to accept that as a compromise. So if they suddenly reverse it all out, that's life. So I don't know. I just think these things can go on for years, and I wouldn't want Mr. Ireland to have to put up with it for another decade. But I'll leave that thought there. It's completely left of field.
Brilliant. I love that, Councillor Goss. I'm sort of obviously going to take some whispers from my colleagues. I think we will defer rather than implement. I would like to just sit down and have a conversation, further conversation, just to ensure that whatever is agreed is acceptable to the member in the room and alike. And if you want to come back next time and do another presentation, I'm excited. No, thank you very much. Right, gentlemen, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone else. Please, could we move on to item number 9? Can we carry on with item number 9?
We will need to, yeah. We will need
Okay, well, can we do it at the end?
You can do it at the end.
Yeah, we'll do it at the end. So the nuts and bolts of why we're here really, to talk about the traffic regulation orders, the update application decision report. I'll pass over to Jason, but just before I do, I just want to say thank you to Jason. He is going to be leaving the organisation, and he's been really helpful to me at any time I've called upon him, and I wish him well in the future. And I think there's another lady, is it Emma?
Yes.
There's another lady, Emma, she's also of merit, and she will also be leaving the organisation, so please pass on our thanks for her long service, both of you. And I think we agreed that we will probably just go to the districts and say, are you happy with what the decision here has been allocated, and we'll just do them vote on each district, or I'll get a nod. Jason.
Yep, thank you very much, Chair. I'll just wait for Owen to take a seat as he's minuting. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. So in essence, this report has been through a couple of iterations as it would have been presented back in what would have been October and November and obviously December. So it's gone through a couple of iterations. The main crux of how the report has now fallen out is to kind of split the tier applications that we received over the last probably couple of years, give or take. Is to split them into non-self-financing schemes and those that are self-financing. The main reason for doing that is because it would seem, on the face of it, kind of a bit of a no-brainer really to deliver the self-financing schemes. And as the report indicates, there is a kind of an immediate payback on delivering those particular schemes, but also to give members a decision to make on those that aren't self-financing. Typical schemes such as junction protection, schemes that wouldn't, albeit would bring in some income from the enforcement, wouldn't necessarily bring any from any other sources of income, such as permits. So that's the way the report is presented. We split those two things down. We've included an estimate of the cost to deliver each of those schemes, and that's based on what we know schemes to cost in terms of advertising, lining, signing, all of the other bits and pieces that go into those. So we've included those, and we've also included the provisional decisions which come from each district. Obviously, this is a committee decision to make, so to all intents and purposes, the committee could decide to go against the provisional decision that districts have recommended, but the general trend has been to support the local district's recommendation. So other than that, I hope the report is fairly self-explanatory. I'm quite happy to take some questions on content or to highlight any particular schemes, which I'm sure each district would be quite happy to comment on too. And I suppose the only other observation really is around the deferral for the scheme in the street in Takeley, which, as has been pointed out, is proposed as a rejection in the report, but obviously we are proposing to defer that to a future meeting. So I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions for Jason, please? This is where we've all done our homework. We've all done what we paid for, what we've been doing for the last year, the client officers, the meetings we've had with residents, the complaints. I've certainly had some complaints from councillors who have been frustrated with the delay of this decision. So I do hope that we can get these through on the nod. The budget is provided for, and I think this is really the important bit. This is to try and help out where residents have got some issues, and to also raise some valuable income. Well, I mean, Appendix B. I'm assuming no one in the room is going to object to approving the self-financing schemes. No? Just so I can just gauge. No? So we'll put that through. So on Appendix A then, is there any of the districts that would like to comment on theirs or possibly not theirs, TRO's applications? Graham, please. Councillor Butland.
Yes, Chairman, it's just one. There's only one in Braintree, but it is also relates to an area which is on the next item on the agenda. So this talks about changing the limited waiting bays to resident permit bays, and similarly later on it's changing it to charging bays. And I just wondered how that does, and I assume you could have resident only bays for part of the day and charging for the other, but could I suggest that the times actually link, because I think we've got a 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. and then an 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. I don't know what happens in that hour, and if they in the morning, and I would suggest that it goes from 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. as a resident thing, and then 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. charging, in which case, not a problem.
Jason, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the observation. I think that's a fair suggestion. I can't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to accommodate that. We'll obviously need to advertise the schemes anyway, so any sort of amendments would be included as part of that process. So yeah, we're quite happy to take that forward. I think if there's any issues with that, we'll let you know. But I can't see any reason why we certainly wouldn't want a gap in terms of the restriction. So whether we put that onto the pay and display element or the residential element, we can talk about that detail, but that's fine.
And then pushing my luck, Chairman, on the Appendix C, there are some schemes. One is from my colleague from Harlow, which I obviously leave there. A very important one, which is about Halstead, which is about actually keeping a main road, the A1, moving as you come into Halstead from the Braintree side. It causes huge disruption there during the working week and also at weekends as well, in the summer when there's a lot of visitor traffic, etc. And it really would keep traffic moving, and I think be, from a road safety point of view, also be very useful if that one at Trinity Street, Halstead, could be included.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, obviously, it's down there to approve. The only observation really to make is that in terms of the policy and how we've applied that, the scoring has effectively come out at 0 on that. I think this is the scheme where there was a suggestion that it might be funded locally. So I don't know whether or not that's been taken in-house to discuss that. But that's the essence of that scheme, is that essentially it kind of goes against the policy that we've got at the moment. As I say, it's that, as you mentioned, it is in there to as a recommendation to approve from a local perspective, but it'd be up for the committee to decide if they wanted to support the delivery of a scheme that essentially was kind of slightly in contradiction to the policy that we've got for TROs.
Chairman, if one was able to give us some idea, not necessarily now, but some idea of what the cost would be, I would be very happy to undertake discussions with Halstead Town Council to see whether they might make a contribution, because I think it's something which would be of benefit to the town as well. But I mean, I don't know whether we're talking about 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. So I'm happy if there was an agreement that, in principle, subject to reaching agreement on how it might be funded by the various parties.
Thank you. I think that's a fair suggestion. In terms of locally funded schemes, they don't generally have to come via the committee. So there are some schemes in Epping and other areas that are being funded outside of the committee. Richard and Councillor Land have delegation to be able to deliver those schemes. So it may be better that we don't make a decision on the scheme at committee and then take that outside of the committee if it's going to be funded locally. That's what I would propose anyway. The only issue with approving it here, it might appear like it's going to be funded by committee. I don't know whether or not we could amend the recommendation or propose something different. Owen?
I don't think we're talking huge amounts of money here, are we, Graham?
200, yeah, 1,500. Sorry, I've got a colleague
so
at the back that deals with it. Yeah, we're talking. Yeah,
would you like to take it offline and maybe have it? Yeah.
Sorry, Chairman. If someone writes to me and says, "Look, we've no objection to actually happening. Yes, let's keep this check moving. we have no objection. But the cost of it is this, it doesn't normally reach our criteria, then I think we can deal with it locally and come back to you."
That'd be great. Well, please do that. Councillor Hargreaves.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was just to confirm, I'll be very happy for the street Takeley to be a deferral. And what we'll do is make sure that the officers pass this application through to the professional consultant looking at this so they can put this in with everything else, and maybe they'll get it anyway.
Really helpful.
We'll get a huge residence parking scheme across the whole area. We'll see how that goes.
Any further questions, please? No. Okay, so we have some recommended decisions that the Joint Committee is requested to agree to budget for the prioritised schemes within the 24-25 financial year in the absence of any surplus funds. Prioritise proposed traffic regulation or schemes from the applications that have been received. By NEPP, members may choose to either approve, reject or defer schemes. Note that any applications that are approved may not become sealed traffic regulation orders. Any proposal will need to be advertised and any objections made during the formal consultation process. D, note that applications that have been received but do not meet the new NEPP scoring criteria shown in Appendix C as per our discussion we've just had. And E, note the new schemes NEPP was introduced in 2023 in Appendix D. Can I move, do you want them approved and seconded on all of one each, or would you like it as a...
I move them on
Move them on block. Right, can I have a proposer then?
Subject to the amendments regarding the plastic Blakely.
Yes.
Can I just check?
Yeah, go on, you carry on.
Apologies, Councillor Button, could I just get the code for the Halstead scheme, just so I've got that definite?
Right, so based on that rambling I undertook and that amendment that's now being done, or amendments, are you okay, Owen? Right, could I have a proposer then to move these things on block? Councillor Goss, I've seen out the corner of my eye. Could I have a seconder, please? I saw Councillor Button second. All those in favour, please. Lovely, that's approved. Thank you for that, everybody, and sorry for any delays that have caused you any stress, like myself. Where are we? Oh, here we go, number 10. Additional on-street paid parking. To consider and approve the advertising of a number of paid parking sites across the partnership area. The treatment of income from these sites, setting the tariff for all partnership sites, including these new sites with a mechanism for annual reviews, providing alternate governance options, reviewing resident parking and other fees by inflation annually, and delegating the making of the required orders to the chair and head of service. Those are documented in a report, and that named officer is Jason once more.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I expect this may be a little bit more contentious than the previous report, and obviously we can go through certain points, but essentially where this has come from is the need for the partnership to consider new income streams, and one of those ways, or one of the limited ways of doing that, is by introducing new on-street pay and display. Obviously, it isn't solely an income generating mechanism. It is about traffic management, and we have to be very important to stress that. But obviously there is this mechanism we have available to us, and alongside the efficiencies that enforcement in areas that have on-street pay and display bring with them, compared to that of restrictions like limited waiting, which require kind of multiple visits to be able to assess whether or not a contravention has occurred. We feel like this is an important kind of route, I guess, to start looking at. So the sites that have been identified as part of this report are ones that officers have looked at over some period of time. There's a number of them in most districts. So not all districts are kind of covered by the implementation of these locations. In terms of the income, those have been modelled by Richard in terms of knowledge of income in other on-street pay and display locations. So we're fairly confident that the range of income from these locations is accurate. In terms of the relation to the budget, we've gone with the kind of lower figure in terms of the income from this. So we've been very kind of conservative in terms of planning for the implementation of these. And in that gives an element of flexibility and I guess a reduced element of risk that if some of these sites weren't to be delivered, that the other sites that were delivered would be able to cover any shortfall that were then felt. I suppose the other point really to mention is, and it is a proposal as part of the report, is that we're looking to kind of pitch the tariffs for these locations aligned to similar car parks in each of the districts that are in the vicinity, but to pitch them at slightly higher tariff band. Now, one of the reasons for that is to try and encourage the use of off-street parking, as that should be an important part of the traffic management process. So pitching them at the same level, albeit that's something we currently do, it's important that we try and shift the behaviour of parking and motorists to off-street car parks. So we hope there will be a bit of a knock-on effect to your own off-street car parks as a result of this. Obviously that would remain to be seen. The way we're doing that in this is to pitch the tariffs at about 20 pence above the off-street prices. What we would need to do, or need to do as a committee, is to review that on an annual basis. So we'd need to take into consideration your own off-street orders and the level at which those are pitched, and obviously that would need to be adjusted in future years. But as things stand, this is how the tariffs would be implemented were the sites to be were to proceed. I think that's it. So again, happy to take questions, of which I expect there will be some. Yeah, so leave it to the floor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jason. Can I ask if there's any comments, please, to be made? Thank you, Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Chairman. For my education, can you just tell me what consultation takes place or has taken place on these before I say anything more?
So to all intents and purposes, there's been no informal consultation to date. What would happen would be the regular kind of legal consultation in terms of a scheme would be advertised, then stakeholders would then be able to comment on that proposal at that point. And that's the process that would happen, that the TROs that we've just agreed would go through as well. So whilst there isn't evidenced local support for these locations at the moment, they are purely officer recommended locations. There would be the opportunity for businesses, residents, anyone that wanted to comment as part of the kind of formal statutory process. So, but in answer to your question, there's been no kind of informal consultation carried out to date.
Okay, could I suggest that we consider how we go about this? I have 3 in Braintree. Personally, I don't have a great deal of problem with this and the thing. But when it first appears in the press, all right, yes, I'm leader of the council, I get a postbag about it. And that I find is annoying because the other thing is on-street parking, county council issue. Have the local county councillors been approached for comments on it? And one specific, which I just raised now, which I think would have come up in any consultation, is around the high street and the centre at Halstead, where there is a funeral parlour there and a number of people waiting to follow the hearse do park there. So it's those little local nuances which I think are important. And I really think that we ought to be going out and consulting before we start doing reports with, this is a great idea. So that's my plea.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. This, for newer members as well, just to add, that consultation that takes place, any feedback from residents or stakeholders is then coming through to Richard, and then in an exceptional circumstance of complaints, for example, then Richard may decide that he doesn't implement that scheme. I just wanted new members to be aware what happens after the consultation, who deals with it, kind of thing, if that makes sense. It adds a bit more to the story.
I just wanted Richard to be aware who deals with the complaints and the public.
Yeah, absolutely.
With all due respect, they don't go to Richard.
No, and holistic, as a sort of holistic statement, I think we, the NEPP, and all of us as part of NEPP, we have been tasked to come up with better lines of communication, better means of improving our income, and I think this is one element of our armoury that has been considered. But I think politics does come into this story greatly, and I sympathise with your comments, and I think they're very valid. I will say I had an in-depth discussion with officers about this agenda item, and my understanding, as it's been put to me, is that some of these are wanted and are fine by members. So we weren't expecting there to be backlash on every area or district, but we really do welcome your comments as a newish member to this panel in your area. It's your area at the end of the day. So I think we need to take on board how we think about bringing these forward and who we email and who we speak to because it's a very potato political scenario. All right.
And my final comment, no, I think it's a fair point, and I think that probably the immediacy of the financial situation has dictated the pace at which this has happened to a degree. I fully appreciate the fact that in an ideal world it would be better to come out, but I think the process that's there, the statutory process there, is designed to protect the views of those that that wish to object. And I think I'd like to think that we would consider that as part of that process. It would be to implement a kind of an informal process for all of these schemes at once would be quite an undertaking. It's not it's something that we could do, but it would take many months to go through that. But I think it's taken, and I think for future sites that we would look to deliver or to consider, then that's something that we can approach local members about perhaps a bit more early than we have done.
Councillor Goss, please.
Cool, you've got good eyesight. Very impressed. Yeah, I mean, some of these have already gone through consultation in the local paper because it appeared yesterday, and I read most of the Facebook comments and Gazette comments, and there were some concerns raised by residents in there as well. So I guess I'm just saying, I'm flagging, I've read them, I'm flagging again that I'm listening to the residents' concerns about these. As we know, with a legal consultation, it's very hard to stop once it's gone out. And as our esteemed Mr. Taylor in the audience, one of our brilliant officers, will often say, there is a legal process, this is what's gone through, it's only exceptional circumstances we wouldn't put a scheme through, where it might end up in the High Court if we don't do it properly, if somebody's minded to take it that way. So I think we just need to be minded that once these go out, the juggernaut is very hard to stop, because unless there is an exceptional circumstance, these will get rubber stamped, because most of these schemes do go through that process and do get approved. So just be mindful of what you wish for Christmas, that this isn't informal, this is a formal process, and unless there's hundreds and hundreds of objections and really good reasons, these will get approved. So I just want people to be aware. So my counsel to residents is, please make sure you do respond to the consultation. The biggest thing that also winds up residents is that we only by law have to go and stick these on lampposts and street furniture, which most people don't read, and then we put it in some paper somewhere to advertise it, and it could be the Chester Herald, something that's maybe not quite the Chester Herald, but you get my meaning, that it could be some innocuous newspaper that people don't read, because if you take the Gazette, used to sell 50,000 copies in Colchester, it probably sells about 5. So just be minded, these things are not easy to find for residents. So again, as councillors, I think we have a legal duty to push people to at least know how to respond.
I just wanted to clear up in my mind the fact that it'd been said that this has appeared in the paper, and whether or not we've started this process already.
I assume they read the agenda.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Councillor Goss, very logical as always. I'd like to just offer out, and I know I've got to come to Councillor Williamson, offer out, if there is anything here that is really burning, and is a problem, we need to individualise them and say that. And if there's consensus the others are okay, then I think we, with all goodwill in the world and understand the situation and trying to enhance better parking in our areas, we propose that these go through. So, Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. If my understanding of the beginning of the meeting is correct, this 140,000 is already in next year's budget. So if some of these do fall by the wayside, are there alternatives that can come in, or do we have a shortfall?
I'm stealing the thunder here, but I'm hearing, and I think it's important I say it, I'm hearing that the transformation could be bigger.
There's a direct link between the pay and display and the other TROs. Normally, the income that we get from pay and display funds the TRO scheme. That's you can almost pretty much look across and see the costs of the thing. And the cost of doing TROs and the cost of repairs and maintenance have increased as well. And we need to look for new ways of funding that. Yes, it forms part of the budget plan because it's one of the reports that's coming to committee. But as I mentioned, we're starting the transformation programme, and we will start that with the knowledge of what's happened at this meeting, won't we? So we'll know what we have to do there. We've got an idea in mind of what we need to do to the transformation, but the more we do with that, the less of the rest of the operation there will be remaining, and you'll start to notice some things not happening if we bring that back any further on. I would predict, yes.
I am concerned, and it goes back to the issue that I raised at the beginning of the meeting about the budget. A member of the public looking at this might draw the conclusion that you are going out to consult on something where you have already, in effect, made a decision because you built it into a budget which you have approved. And it's a long time since I did law, but predetermination, is an issue. Potentially might be an issue. I need to be advised on that. And actually, we as a committee are making the decision. And I say I don't have a problem with the concept of moving traffic, off the street parking, and already, suggesting that in Halstead, in a previous thing, that's what we want to do. This does feel, at the moment, to me, that it's much more financially driven, which again, we've got to be realistic. Times are hard and we've got to find money. It's the way in which we are seen to do things. And Councillor Goss obviously has seen in Colchester what I've seen in Braintree. And I just think we're making a rod for our own back unless we appreciate that we've got ourselves into an area where we shouldn't be, but we might need to think sometimes the best way forward is a little bit of a way back before you move forward.
Do you have a suggestion on that?
I would go out to non-formal consultation. I've said to Paul here, as far as Braintree is concerned, if this went ahead today, we would immediately as a council, be writing to our county councillors for the area, to our town and parish councils, to the ward members on the district council, to say this is proposed, and if you're in favour of it, fine, put it in, and if you aren't, put it in. But whatever you do, I would make sure that everyone was aware of what was being proposed. Ideally, I would prefer that to be done informally, but then we've got to recognise, quite rightly, that that would take time and would have an impact on the budget, which is why I said at the beginning that I was unhappy with 140,000 being put into a budget on a decision we hadn't yet made.
The budget angle, I don't disagree with you, but I think there's got to be some assumption. We talked earlier on about being assumptions about what we've got to achieve. And if there's a paper going with an amount in it, then you've got to assume that that is one outcome, isn't it? If there's another outcome, then we've got to do something different. And I've mentioned that there's this other part of the transformation that we can cover that somehow else. This is a report that's in there because that's one way of doing it, and it supports the very thing that it is. It supports maintenance of and doing TROs. You can see where the money's going from this directly. But it is the committee's decision. That's why it comes to committee. It's absolutely democratic, isn't it?
I'm not sure if this is helpful or not, Chair, but I'll offer it anyway. I mean, ultimately a budget is just a set of assumptions, isn't it, really? And you have to start somewhere in terms of a set of assumptions. You'll put in provision, for example, for a contract, but you're not committed to that contract until you actually sign the contract. But you build a plan, a financial plan around what you intend to do, and I suppose this is the demonstration of that really in terms of a financial sense. It doesn't mean necessarily that you are committed to doing it. That's a separate decision. But it, as I say, it's a statement of intent maybe.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, we knew this one would be the talking point of the day. I mean, are there any members in here that have got no objections to their areas that's being proposed, the suggestions that are put forward for their area? Councillor Goss?
So I think I do agree with Councillor Butland wholeheartedly that we're also where we are, and this item's been delayed by quite a few months. So I don't feel we've got much choice other than to put it forwards, because we've already agreed the budget, etc. But I think maybe we add into the recommendation that should there be substantial objections, then those schemes have to be pulled out for further discussion, either with yourself or delegated back to the relevant portfolio holder, the representative for that council, to discuss it, just to ensure that it's absolutely not just rubber stamping it perfect. So as long as we've absolutely got that safety net and ability to do that, then I'm happy to approve to push it forwards, just in case.
Which then comes back to your relevant point earlier about making sure we try as members to get the information out there. Yes. Are there any other comments from any other of the districts? Yes, Councillor Barry.
Yeah, thank you. So it's an element of both, essentially. So there are some districts that have put forward locations themselves, and some of which have come from officers. We've not highlighted in the report which of those, are which, but that's how, essentially what the team have done, have identified locations that, with our experience, we feel would benefit from this type of measure. There are many, many more that we could have put forward. We've tried to reason in terms of sites that we think may be more palatable, and there are obviously districts that aren't touched by this. I mean, Uttlesford's another one that we've got no recommended locations for, and again, that's kind of part of the process that Uttlesford are going for in terms of their review of parking there. Similar with tendering as well. We know there's been issues with Frinton and Clacton and other things. So there are a lot of other locations that we could have done, and probably locations that would benefit the partnership much more financially. But we've tried to reason with these. But where they've come from, it's a mixture of officer and client officers. Whether or not those client officers have included members as part of that discussion, I don't know. Probably look towards Harlow a little bit. I don't know, Councillor Pearce, if you had any say in your locations or not, but...
I've had no discussions, but I will say, coming back to Councillor Barry, there has to be robust consultation, because there is only one area I have a little bit of concern, the adjacency to the hospital. But in terms of all the rest, absolutely fine with, but I just think robust consultation.
I kind of wish you'd have said that you didn't write on where we had support on that spreadsheet. and so we could see, and then we would have a list where we could possibly have a bit more clarity over feeling confident of moving forward. I've said it. Is there any way you can pull them out?
What, individual locations?
Well, no, I'm interested to know where we've said there is support, you know, where we have had a firm, recommendation from an officer or a local.
To my knowledge, it is Harlow only that have come up with that. There may have, I can't think of an example. I don't know if Shane would knows of any of the locations that might have been put forward other than Harlow. I don't know if you've got any. You can nod or shake your head.
Yeah,
but
this could turn into a very long conversation.
I mean, in terms of the process, in terms of the process, client officers have been aware of it. Obviously, we have a client officer meeting prior to this meeting, and that's not been kind of presented as an issue at that. But in terms of the process beyond now, it's up to the committee in terms of whether they want to deliver them. If they want to put another step in terms of an informal consultation, then that's purely at your gift to recommend that, and we as officers would obviously look to do that. The only thing I would say about that is it would obviously delay the deliverability of the schemes, and that would obviously affect the budget, but that's not necessarily a reason not to do it, because obviously you've got to be comfortable with the decision you're making. So
I can't, I mean, I'm very new as well. I mean, I just can't stress enough the importance of that relationship and communication with officer, client relation and counsellor. I get some emails that confuse me greatly as to whether everyone's talking to each other. Councillor Goss?
Yeah, I think it comes back to what I said earlier. There is a safety net in this, that if there's enough objections and exactly what you said, Councillor Land, we have a responsibility to share it on social media, etc., and to make sure it's out there, not just the legal process that frankly is quite poor from a communication point of view, unless you've got a lamppost and sign fetish, or you look in the back of the Chester Herald or something. So absolutely, we need to make sure that's communicated out, and actually our own social media teams have a responsibility for each council. So for instance, Chester's comms team should be pushing this out and pushing people towards where they can respond. So I think I'm not necessarily comfortable with some of the schemes in here, but at the end of the day, we know the history, we know the impact, we know the process this will go for. So I'm at least comfortable there is a way of stopping them if we have to. So for me, I think that is enough, but I do absolutely agree with what Councillor Butland said, and there's lessons to learn for the future.
So can I ask what this informal consultation would look like?
It could be anything, given that it's informal. I mean, we have done informal consultations before. Some of these locations are residential, so you could contact the residents directly, for example, or we could. There's lots of options, and that I mean, it's difficult for me to kind of define what an informal consultation would be, but it could be.
By location as well, the location groups on. But the locations are all a bit different from each other as well, aren't they? And different things in different places call for different sorts of engagement. I think it's important we start with county council members and other councils. That's a good place to start. I would reiterate, this has been through the client office as well. We're not just officers writing a report here. We have a group of client officers who can engage, and we get feedback at a pre-meeting. So it's not just his report. There has been some pre-consultation on it, but I agree. If we need to go to a further consultation, then that's absolutely a reasonable thing to do.
Can someone just clarify to me? I did ask Richard, but I'm just still confused. So you've seen something. You said it's not a press release. What has been documented already?
So, you've just picked up on the point I was about to make. This is a public document. Yes. And this public document has been published probably 3 times now, because these schemes go back to previous agendas. So these are not a surprise. We've just deferred it. The reason it was in the paper is because the Gazette did its job and looked at the agenda and went, there's a whole load of schemes in here for Colchester. So we're going to put it on the Gazette website and on Facebook, and we're going to ask residents what they think. So that's how it was done. The legal process is you have to put an advert in the back of the cheapest, nastiest newspaper to meet your legal requirements, whether it's the Chester Herald. I do. It doesn't even exist. But you know, people are not going to read it. But what the Gazette has done is just gone to a public agenda, pulled it out and gone, there's a story here, they're going to change these places from X to Y, what do you think? And then obviously people being on social media have voiced their usual positive thoughts about it. And that's kind of how I've got the feedback. So that's just the Gazette doing its job rightly. But all these schemes are not a surprise because they've been published in the public domain several times, because this is in an agenda 7 days before a public meeting. So I'm kind of minded that I don't think we've got a choice to push it forwards. I'm sorry, I think the choice is we do have to put it out there, put it through the formal consultation, but I'm comforted by the fact we can pull them if there's a lot of
But
response.
you'll keep an eye on the juggernaut with the hand on the brake.
Yes,
Excellent.
absolutely. Yeah. So because I think the informal consultation, I mean, you could say, look, I'll tell you what, officers, you've got a lot of work to do in 2 weeks. You've got to make sure all the borough, city, county councillors know about this before we put it through the formal consultation process. You could put a slight delay in by a couple of weeks. But I think, as Jason said, the longer you delay it, it then starts to have an impact potentially on the net budget. So we're kind of going in circles here. And then we're going to have to look at maybe making some other people redundant, or maybe cranking up car parking charges or permit charges, which affect more people. So you've always got to think there's a knock-on effect. And although I'm not particularly keen on some of the suggestions in here, I'm comforted that we've got that handbrake in the juggernaut that we can pull. And we've got it in the paperwork, and we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't ensure that happened. So I'm comfortable with it going forwards personally, like some of it, but at the end of the day, we are also there to take some tough decisions.
I agree, and I'm comforted by the comments around this. Has had some discussion from client officers, and maybe some of them aren't here now that made those decisions. I don't know the answer to that question. I think we, quite rightly, as Graham pointed out, should possibly have had the agenda items in a slightly different order. But I think we were aware early on from Graham's points that we knew that this was built into the... So I don't necessarily subscribe to this as a totally financial decision. I don't subscribe to that. Difficult decisions to be made, and inevitably we've got to try and push forward now with what we think is right and what we've discussed. Yes, Andy, please. I totally understand where you're coming from. I think this feels like it's something slightly different, in as much as we've had these on our agenda for some time. This is something we've pushed down the road, and the individual gentleman's item is sort of something different. No. Reputational. I don't know. I don't. I think we this is the nuts and bolts and nitty gritty of this meeting, and I think this is a decision that we've got to come to one way or another. And I think we're, as elected members, never going to be able to always make easy decisions. And I'm comfortable with making this decision, and with some of the pieces of information we've heard from yourself, Councillor Goss, and others, that it will give people the opportunity to have a proper. But I think we'd have to say in the recommendations that each council is going to have to put in a fairly robust comms plan. And I don't want to put extra work on a council, but it might just be some social media, just so that we can be seen to have tried to inform. Yes, Jason. Sorry, Councillor Goss, I'll come to you in a minute.
Yeah, in fact, in the interest of trying to move things forward, I guess, I wonder if we may be able to do more as part of the formal consultation process than we would have done statutory. What that would look like, obviously we would need to look at each individual location, but for example, we could let a drop residents in affected areas to make them very aware of what the proposal is. Obviously that wouldn't be an informal consultation, it'd be more of an invitation for them to comment as part of the formal process. But if you are looking to support the scheme, that might be something that we could do. That would obviously bring additional cost in terms of officer time and potentially postage and all that kind of thing. But if we need to do it to be able to get these schemes through, then that might be a halfway house, perhaps. It's just a thought.
Does that sound reasonable? Councillor Button?
Two things. One, I think the proactive publicity has to come from NEPP, not from individual authorities. It's not the districts and the boroughs who are putting forward proposals for on-street parking. If anything, it's Essex County Council. So I think we just need to be clear where responsibility
your point is an excellent one. Yeah.
lies, because
You don't want to take flack.
well, yeah, quite right. You know, I take enough flack. You shouldn't have to. You know, I'm taking enough
The
flack.
county council then needs to pick
Well,
up
I think it needs to be proactive publicity on that, yes. And the other thing, which has now gone straight out of my head, sorry, it has disappeared. There was one other thing. Oh, yes, let her drop to businesses. That's right. Let's not forget businesses. So, for example, Newland Street, centre of Whittam, people drive up, they turn in at 90 degrees to the road, and they go in the business and they come out. So let's not forget business, because I think every council is keen to develop its businesses and support its businesses as well, because they're the lifeblood of many of our communities.
Councillor Goss, and then we'll try and formulate something.
Yes, two very quick points. Just going back to the point about Mr. Ireland, I don't think I'll ever forget his name. That's a slightly different issue, I agree, because, and actually we've listened, I keep saying we're here to listen, we've actually deferred it, not rejected it. So we actually have listened to his concerns, and that may get moved forwards in another decade, another year. But the other piece is around communication. Although I agree with you, if I live in Colchester, I'm more likely to follow Colchester City Council's social media than the NEPP or Essex County Council. So I think, although I agree, I still think the comms teams should at least forward the tweets or X's or the Facebook posts. I think that I think you're right. Probably the comms can originate from NEPP, but then all of the social media teams need to share it, and we all need to share it. I think so. I agree. There's a hierarchy there. So you're spot on, but we still do have a part to play because of what people follow locally.
Okay, I've listened with great intent. I'm keen to give the opportunity for any of the members here to pull certain ones of these that are just a straight no. Are there any members here that are seeing that in any of these schemes, a straight no, this is just not happening over the dead body?
I've not consulted on them, so I can't, I've got to be consistent.
Yes,
you know,
yes, and you're a new member to the committee.
I have no objection to them, but that's my personal opinion. I've not spoken to the people that and I haven't spoken to the businesses in Newland.
No, but I am also aware that from a political standpoint, there is sometimes decisions are made with our own subjectivity hat on, and it might not influence. Brilliant. Okay, so that's that. If we then, oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. You asked a question about actually saying no. We would have to, till we can have further discussions with officers, and there's a wider point with Essex County Council that we need to consult with on one of the schemes as well. So in terms of, there would be two that we'd have to say no to currently.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Hargreaves.
Could I speak as almost certainly the most unpopular person in the whole of Uttlesford? We've got, and I will tell you what, we've got our consultation just finishing tomorrow on our off-street parking. Not charged, haven't increased for years and years and years, and obviously big increases, some big increases, and we've got hundreds of everything is objected to, the whole lot's objected to. A few people supporting it, but the majority who don't care, or who say yes, you should be doing it, they're not going down the consultation. So what will happen is there will be a huge raft because everyone doesn't want to pay more for parking or to pay new charges for parking. So on the consultation, what you'll need to do is look very carefully at, is somebody telling you something useful within the comments? We have got some of that stuff coming back, things you never thought of, which means we probably are going to change some of our proposals. And the rest of it will be the sort of, we don't want this. The volume of stuff we've got back is possibly, it could even be almost equal. The whole comments we've got on our long-awaited and very contentious local plan, which is a million times more important. So you will get a lot of complaint. Another thing is, there is resentment when something comes in from Colchester. What are these people from Colchester doing with our parking? Obviously, we don't understand the system, no idea about how it works. Therefore, I would support the point that comms needs to come from the individual councils, obviously with NEPP, so it's seen as local. And I'm hearing if it is just to make money, and is not actually backed by, there is a problem here. And that will be in your consultation, is your photographs. Here's the problem, all packed with cars, no one can find a space, or there's not sufficient churn outside the shops, there's parking here for hours, we actually want it to be moved on, that will be beneficial. If you can make a good case for it, then that's fine. If you can't, and it's just to make money, to fill the budget. I would just say on this, by the way, I'm going to abstain because I'm not got anything in this. I'm having already got myself the most unpopular person in Uttlesford. I don't wish to then vote for parking elsewhere and make myself unpopular in Colchester, Harlow, Braintree and Epping Forest. I've got enough problems. Thank you.
Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Chair. Do I pick up my flak jacket on the way out because I'm going to need one? I think that we're all going to get inundated with when this gets out there. So I need a NEPP flak jacket.
Any other comments? Councillor Barry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm sitting here taking a neutral stance like Councillor Hargreaves because there are no schemes in my area. But I do take the points. I'm listening very interestingly with the comments, and the one that started this, Councillor Butland, about predetermination of a budget, is the one that does concern me. But also the fact that officers have come up with schemes to create revenue first and foremost, and then they're looking to justify it by a consultation. Now, I'm pleased to hear that the consultation may have, some merit, and that it will be a proper consultation, not a token gesture. So I think that's important that we recognise that. But we have been threatened by the County Council Forward Plan for on-street parking on the seafront in Tenrin, Frinton, Clacton, which would have massive repercussions in terms of traffic displacement into residential areas and so on. And if somebody, was to come along and say, well, we're doing this because we want to just simply raise revenue to sort out, NEPP finances, then there would be hell on, really. Just across the district. So I'm inclined, I will be abstaining on this particular vote, but I think it's setting a precedent here, quite a dangerous one, which I'm very uncomfortable with.
It's a policy-based decision at the top end of this. Our policy says the preferred method of controlling curbside parking is by using paid-for parking. Limited waiting, which most of these are, is really, really inefficient. You have to keep going back there again and again and again to check the vehicle, take its registration mark, take the valve positions, go away for the waiting time, come back, see if it's still there, add 10 minutes on because that's now the law. And then you have to go away and come back again and see if it's come back again, and then see if it's come back again. So you're constantly, chasing around to every vehicle to find out if it's overstayed, whereas the paid for or some ticket-based parking of some sort is so much more efficient, and it is our policy. That's what our policy says. Our policy says our preferred method of controlling curbside parking is paid for parking. So we start with a policy-based decision. That's parking. That's what we're here to do. They're intrinsically linked though, because the thing that's a byproduct of doing that, there's some money, and you can't get away from that. However you look at it, and everybody will say, "Oh, what's this worth there? What's that generate?" There's always that column in there. What's the budget? How will you make a saving? All the rest of it. It's always there. It's always nagging at you. But from a parking policy point of view, the very best way of controlling curbside parking, you want a turnover in parking. You want to assure that there's a space for somebody to go in. Cars aren't circulating around the roads. That's the whole policy piece around highway curbside-based parking. And you say no more than that. That's what the policy says. So we start from a policy-based position. There is an income. It's the elephant in the room, and maybe not because we keep talking about it. And we've shown what that income is. So it's completely open and transparent. There we are. We've worked out what the low and the high values of the thing would be and what it means. You can say no more than that, really, can you? It's a policy-based method of ensuring turnover and correct usage of the curbside. Where you really want to park your car is in a car park.
Councillor Goss, did you want to say something? I can't remember.
No, I'm all good.
Is that your pacemaker? Right. Okay. So we are the decision makers. From what I'm hearing, there is some level of support to move forward with a enhanced level of consultation. Is that supported in the room? Yes. Graham? Oh my lord. I think we have had this meeting going on for far too long.
You need to be clear if that's an informal or formal, enhanced consultation.
Enhanced informal, enhanced formal.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about timescales in relation to that matter, aren't you? Yeah. Nuisance.
It's just come to try and get it.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's the security and the regalia cabinet.
It's the sign, isn't it? Would anyone like to make a proposal?
So I think let's take this forwards. Let's go with the formal consultation as planned, but with the extra letter drops included, because that can just be part of the process. And it comes back to what I said earlier, it's comms. It's pushing people on how to object or support. And therefore it is a little bit of extra effort and some extra bits of paper. But I think that's the right approach, because we've then got two hands on the handbrake in the juggernaut, and I think that should give us all comfort.
Would anyone second that? Councillor Williamson?
Yep, happy to second that, Chair.
All those in favour? Against? Abstain? Right, if we could have some detailed information fairly quickly as to what this looks like, how it moves forward, all comms teams, our own comms teams, the social media that's going to be prepared that can then be shared. We'd like to see that before it goes out. Please, I've had that as an action. Please. No problem. Quite happy to come and meet with comms teams if necessary. Yeah. Right, okay, thank you for that. I think we had a good discussion on that. Some good points made. Obstructive parking, which is item number 11. Oh, right. Do you want to go back to yours? Right, unfortunately, not unfortunately, there was a statement to be read out on the TRO's agenda item. It affected a TRO. I think we need to just read that statement out, and if there is a move towards us then saying that that one isn't going to be accepted as part of the big proposal, we can make that decision if necessary. And we'll just want to hear from yourself and then maybe the local member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and apologies to the joint committee. I was given a statement by Mr. Jeff Smith to do with one of the TROs put forward for approval. It's one of Epping Forest's, and it is to do with the summit, and I'm going to mispronounce this because I always do. Loughton. Thank you. Loughton. Apologies, I should have read this out before joint committee considered this item, but I'll read it out now, and then should the joint committee wish to reconsider this one particular TRO, that would be within your gift. So the statement from Mr. Jeff Smith begins, there was a meeting yesterday evening of a number of the residents in the summit to discuss the proposal on the agenda of the NEPP meeting this Thursday, 1st of February 2024. We do not support the proposition being put forward to the meeting and ask that this matter is now deferred for further clarification. We are very concerned at our cul-de-sac effectively being classified as a red route and the proposition itself being worded so vaguely. It refers to lines at the junctions and the possibility of extensions further into the road without any definition whatsoever. An earlier NEPP map showed lines extending in front of residents' houses, and this is totally and absolutely unacceptable. We feel so strongly about this that we will be requesting a meeting with those councillors directly involved in parking matters in this locality to review once again the whole issue here, both school staff parking in the road and the safety issue of emergency vehicle access. That statement ends.
Thank you. Would it be possible to get some local intel on this, where it came from, why it was put forward?
I can't provide the local input necessarily, but this is a scheme that has got quite a bit of history to it. Some members that have been part of the committee for a while, I'm not sure there's actually that many that probably would have been here then, but has been subject to a number of proposals in the past. This was one that did come to, I think it was the tendering meeting as well for comment. In short, I think the statement that has kind of been that's been provided by local resident is in response to perhaps a slight lack of clarity around what the proposal for the location is. I know some detail has been provided to some local residents about what that is. To all intents and purposes, we are talking about red route junction protection with some red lines on one side of the road, again to help in terms of access. I don't know if Amelia wants to comment any further on that particular point.
Thank you, Chair. The Summit scheme is a non-self-financing scheme, so the committee has decided to defer given the financial kind of pressures. So it's currently being deferred, and we would support that. So the TRO report, Appendix A, the Summit scheme is on there, so that's been agreed to be deferred by the committee.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
In the earlier report, yes.
It's on here as approved. 1549945 is that the one?
But it's in Appendix A, which has been agreed to be deferred.
Yeah, Appendix A got approved in the TRO section.
Sorry, it isn't B, the self-financing ones that were approved. So
Yeah,
the non-self-financing ones, we aren't proceed.
No, we are.
Oh, we are?
Yeah, they all got approved, yeah.
So I apologise, so yes. So in that case, we know that NEPP officers have met with the residents to discuss the schemes, and we would be happy to take that forward with the residents and make sure it's a scheme that they're happy to support.
Only, yeah, exactly. The actual design
based.
The design scheme is yet to be kind of designed, if you like, and that would be part of the process now. But we can work to ensure that that's what's required.
Thank you very much for everyone's input on that. Item number 11, please. Richard, isn't it?
Is this footway parking?
Yes.
Is this the moment we've all been waiting for?
Well, we do say that, don't we?
No progress has been made, but Edinburgh have just started. Scotland falls under different rules. No progress in the England footway parking outside London, though.
Nothing to note or anything like that? No. The forward plan is before you, just to confirm that there are the meeting dates in there, etc. Owen, is there anything to add? We just need to recommend, note and approve those, really.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Any comments? Could I have a proposer then, please, for the two recommendations? I've got Councillor Goss, a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Butland. All in favour, please. Thank you very much. And I think that brings our meeting to a conclusion. It's rather long. I think some have been shorter, so we've probably had to bear the brunt of the shorter ones today. So thank you so much for all your time and your travelling requirements to get here, and I hope you have a safe journey home.